If there is an example of excellent use of my tax dollars, the public library is it. I don't hide the fact that I'm a great fan of libraries in general, and of the Mamaroneck Library in particular. I know we're in a digital revolution, and most books and reference materials are available in digital format. But libraries aren't about only books. They're media centers, computer labs, sources for digital materials, and contact with reference librarians who can focus your quests and shorten your search time for the resources you seek. The library has also become a community center for all individuals and families. Today I've asked Jeff Meegan, president of the Mamaroneck Library, to talk about Mamaroneck's stunning new library. Years in the planning and construction, it opened at last in the early summer of 2011. I'm Alice Bloom. This is A Town and Village 2. Welcome, Jeff. Here we are in the beautiful children's room of the new library.
In the reference part of the children's room.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. I am just blown away. I'm always wandering around this building finding new nooks and crannies and wonderful places. When did the library open?
Well, we had a soft opening in June. And so we moved out of 102 Mamaroneck Avenue, where we've been for a couple of years, and sort of got used to the place during the summer. And then in September, we had a gala hard opening.
Okay, so that's September of 2011.
Right.
How long was the library in that location on Mamaroneck Avenue? About 2 years?
Yeah, at least 2 years.
I have to tell you, I have to commend the staff of the library for functioning there. I mean, it was a tough spot. And they did a yeoman's job. I mean, keeping things running. Of course, they couldn't have all of the services and facilities that they would have liked to provide, and I think I hope the community was understanding about that.
Actually, some patrons have told me that they felt it was really cozy.
Well, it was very cozy. It also had a little bit of a moldy smell, but I was very grateful to see them move them here into this new spot.
It was nice for me because my office is in that building.
Oh, how convenient, except
Yes.
you couldn't be bothered all the time, too. There was a lot of planning that went into designing this new building. Now, let's talk for just a moment about the old building, which was built in 1927?
Yes.
Okay. And it was very charming.
Still is.
That's right. It's hard to believe. Sometimes I'm sitting in the reference room or the reading area, and I forget that that was the entrance to the old library. The library was pretty spanking wonderful when it was first built, but the last generation, I would say, it was really a struggle to function there. Why? What happened to the old building?
Well, there was an addition in the 60s and an addition in the 80s when the Emlyn was built, and it was hard to match all of those together. I don't think the planning of that was too well, and match the systems, the heating and air conditioning and electrical and so on. And it got to the stage where everything was about to give out. So we either had to redo all of those pieces or redo them and add an addition, which is what we chose to do.
I'd been told that if it were challenged, the library probably in its former state would not have been approved or wouldn't have passed code enforcement.
That's probably true, yeah. That's true with a lot of older buildings, but that's true, yes.
With that one in particular, and I know the librarians always struggled with leaks. There would be pots of water all over every time it rained, and the air conditioning didn't work, and the heat didn't work so great.
Absolutely.
And
it all would have had to be replaced. And it probably would have cost maybe 60% or 60 to 70% of what we've spent for the whole new anyhow. So that's why we decided to do it all new.
Okay, now the library expanded. First of all, I feel like it's my job to.
It
I'm a
is.
taxpayer here too. We bought property adjacent to the old library.
Correct.
Okay, and that was purchased when?
It was before my time on the board, so it had to be probably more than 9 years ago.
So then the planning for the new library was starting way back 10 years ago?
Oh, yes, at least.
Okay, so the property was purchased, and when did the actual planning for the new library begin?
It began when I'm in my 9th year, and it began.
9th year on the board.
Yes, and we have term limits, so this is my last year. We started planning then And Joan Grott, our former late director, who was really one of the impetuses behind all of this.
She was very well loved and
Yeah, absolutely.
very sorely missed, of course.
Terrific library and a terrific staff and so on. But it sort of began with her, and she actually, I went back and looked at, and my package when I first came on the board came from Joan, and she called me up and said, you must read this and you must read that and so on. And so she sort of pushed the board, and then we've also had a grant of money for the sole purpose of spending for consulting and pre-planning and so forth. And that allowed us to use private money instead of public money to see where we should go and what we should build. And so we used that money, and we were very lucky to choose a high-quality consultant, which the original consulting firm was the Jonathan Rose Companies in New York. And that's helped us at the very beginning, and they helped us choose the architects and the construction managers and so on. And so thank God for that gift of money. And it started from that, and we had, I can't tell you how many meetings with the Jonathan Rose people. And I also have to mention one person from that who stayed with us and has been our owner's rep ever since the beginning, and that's a woman named Lisa Tilney, who no longer works for Jonathan Rose, but she has stayed with us, and to this day is still, with a few odds and ends that we're dealing with, has been with us, and she's absolutely superb.
Okay. Now there are a lot of volunteers who were involved in the planning as well, working with the consultants.
Well, the board, we have a ton of volunteers, and we have the Friends of the Library who supply a lot of volunteers, but probably the most important person on the board during the time I've been here is Helen Rafferty in pushing the library, and she was the board president, and she served out her 9 years, but stayed with us as the person in charge of the construction.
I've heard her referred to as the project manager.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah.
Want of a better
she's
term.
sort of tied it all together, and she's been here, up until the last couple of months, been here almost every day.
Okay, overseeing that. George Schieferdecker was also very...
Well, we're lucky. There's two people from Prospect Avenue,
Yes.
Helen Rafferty, and we went through a series of 6 interviews for architects from Boston to south of New York, and we chose BKSK, and George is a partner of that firm in the city.
Was that just coincidence?
That was coincidence.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And the other coincidence, because we are unfortunately a public institution, not unfortunately that we're public, but unfortunately because we're public, we have to follow the Wicks law, which hopefully will be out of the legislature
Well,
sometime.
Wicks law, basically, for those who don't know, require you to get 3 bids, I believe.
4 major contracts instead of having one contractor who hires subs. And so you have to then hire a construction management firm to tie it all together. And the same thing, we sent out requests for proposals, and we interviewed, I think, 5 or 6 firms. And one of the last, and I'm sort of proud of this, one of the last firms that I suggested on my own, because I knew the CEO, was Liro, which is one of the LIRO, which is one of the largest construction management firms in the metropolitan area. They do subways and part of the World Trade and so on. And the CEO is a fellow that lives out in Shore Acres named Lou Tormenta. And he grew up here, went to Rhinebeck schools, married his childhood sweetheart. And his father was an immigrant brought over by directors as a cabinet maker and work on the insides of boats. And so Lou is an absolutely superb guy, so we're lucky to have...
How fortunate.
After all of those interviews and doing it all properly, we wound up with George and Lou.
Well, a talent bank right in the village of Mamaroneck.
Absolutely.
Now, I know those folks didn't work in a vacuum. They went out to the community to solicit input from members of the community about what kinds of things they use the library for and what kinds of things they'd like to use the library for. How did that work?
Well, one of the first things we did was I forget his name, but we retained a worldwide consultant expert on libraries. And he came in and the size of the community, the square footage, the number of books you have, the number of CDs and DVDs.
So he assessed what was here
and what we should have, but the size of the community and,
Okay.
and the number of schools and, you know, all of those factors that go into it. And of course, he gave us this fancy report, and I must say, it all changed from the time of that report because technology is shooting ahead. I mean, when he did that report, we didn't have Kindles. As we went along, we had to try to be more flexible, and that was what we tried to do in the final design of the building, because we know it's not going to slow down, it's only going to get
It's only gonna
faster,
get
and
more.
so we want to be as flexible as possible.
I want to go into all those things in detail, and we will in a little while. But what I'd really like to know is what impact the new library has had on the community. Do you see greater usage here?
Well, I hope it's going to be greater usage. First of all, the impact has been inconvenience because of our construction. You know, so
Okay, but the
if-
construction's over, now
but,
that we're
But
open.
it's a beacon. You know,
Okay.
people say, what is that thing they're building up on top of the hill, and why is it taking so long? And then they see the glass go in, and they say, oh, that looks kind of nice. And believe me, there are a lot of people who now notice the library physically, which itself is a draw.
Have we given out more library cards since the library's opened?
Since we opened, we're about 1,000 new member patrons.
Isn't that amazing? And are
Yeah.
they all from the village of Mamaroneck?
Well, that's sort of an interesting thing. You can get a card from this library. It used to be you had to live within the village boundaries until one night I was playing paddle tennis, and some fellow who lived up on Old White Plains Road said to me, my kid goes to Mamaroneck Avenue School, and the other kids there can get a library card, but my kid can't get a library card because I'm in the unincorporated section, even though I have a postal address of Mamaroneck.
Oh, I see.
And so I proposed to the board that we expand our card system to 10543. So that's what we use.
Seems fair. Of course, the library system is so integrated with the Westchester library system that, for example, if you ask for a book that our library doesn't own, they put out the request, and within a day or two, they've achieved it from Ossining or Tarrytown.
I just got 2 movies about New Orleans.
Right, it's just amazing. In a perfect world, what would our library be like?
A community center that not only provides books and periodicals and so on, but all sorts of programs and events and anything that has to do with the community. I think it's in them. It's one of the few things that ties everything in the community together. And we, as a result, and it always has been here in Mamaroneck, we try to keep it non-political. This is the one thing that ties the whole place together. And that's what we're shooting for.
Do you see more usage of it by people who've never been here before? You said you've given out 1,000 library cards.
Absolutely.
People who
Absolutely.
What do you have to say to people who say to you or to me, why do we need a library? I mean, I don't go there, I don't need it, it just seems a complete waste of money.
Well, I think it's pretty silly because, first of all, almost every community in the country has a library. And if almost every community in the country has a library,
A good reason.
you know, there must be a good reason to have them. And
Well, I've had people say to me, and not with any malice, but just with puzzlement, I never go there. And people who are longtime Mamaroneck residents and devoted to the community, it's not like they're looking to go elsewhere. But why all that money? Why should we do that?
because it is a community center. Why have sewers? Why have water
Well, you see, but they
lines?
can justify that. I mean, that's health related.
Well, this relates to your mind. This is a flushing of the mind.
I don't think we want that
Yeah, well,
analogy
that's not a good
to
analogy.
fly.
But in any event, you live in a community and you need to be part of the community. And that's what we're providing, a community center. That's why we put such an emphasis in our new community room downstairs. It's more than doubled in size. It's got all the technological stuff in it. It's open to the public. I mean, all kinds of outfits want to use it. One of our first programs, which was just a couple of weeks ago, was down there, and it was by the direct descendants of the Heathcotes, and a brother and sister, and they came from England, and they gave this program, which was absolutely wonderful. The sister gave the American Heathcote background, and Caleb, how he became mayor of New York City, and so on, and her brother gave the English background, and how Caleb came here because his brother stole his fiancée. Now, they were both mayors. One was Lord Mayor of London, and the other was Mayor of New York City.
It's
Great
fascinating.
program for the community.
Right, and who knew?
Right.
People here at Live don't necessarily know about the history, so the library has a lot of historical
And that's right. And we
opportunities.
made the Historical Society part of the library.
Okay.
And they have their own room in the library.
Now, what's the relationship between the library and our schools?
Well, we try to get it as close as possible. And we run a teacher program in the afternoon, so kids can come here directly from school. We have made
Well, let me just back up for a sec. There's a teacher in the library?
yeah, we have a teacher program in the library.
So any weekday afternoon, a child can come and whatever they're studying, they need help with the history,
Right.
English, and they can
Absolutely.
avail themselves of that.
Absolutely.
No cost to the parents.
Correct.
Isn't that amazing? And is that well taken advantage of?
Absolutely. And we, in designing this library, we now have not only, we had a children's room before, which was at the lower level near the Emlyn lobby. The children's room is now not a room, but an entire floor, which is where we are now. But we now have an entire room for the youth, that's teenagers,
Okay.
down on that lower level. And
Why do we separate them?
well, first of all, the children's library is absolutely more secure now. You have to come in through the front door, you have to take the elevator up, and
Who thought?
and we have it on the second floor, so everybody's all in one place. The youth, we have them so you can enter from Library Lane.
They can park their bikes outside.
They can park their bikes out there. It's a completely different entrance. They, so they can feel like, hey, this is our space.
Now, I noticed that the kids' library has a view of the harbor.
Yes,
Are adults allowed to come up and look?
absolutely.
Okay.
There are always adults up here. I told you before, there are a lot of grandparents that bring kids up to this children's room.
Yes. Now, the library also has a coffee bar.
It does.
Now, I assume that all the soliciting of ideas led to creating something like that because there's useful space in that library and it's devoted to a little bar with coffee.
We had, I can't tell you how many hours of discussions about how big or small or what or whether to about the coffee. So what you see is sort of a compromise, and what you have a little counter there that overlooks the outdoor patio, and that's so people can sit at the counter and read and have a cup of coffee.
You know, Jeff, I think there are some people who think that libraries are about books. And as we touched on before, there's a big revolution going on. Call it a digital revolution. I don't want to be, trite about it, but libraries aren't just about books anymore.
That's correct.
What does your library card buy you?
That's a good question. I mean, you don't even have to have a library card to walk in this place and sit down and use the periodicals and read the newspaper and so on.
And use the Wi-Fi.
And use the Wi-Fi, absolutely. So, or sign up for the computer, but we try to provide as much of those services as possible, and we try to do programs. And a lot of the programs at the moment are children's programs, so naturally towards that. We have Roots and Shoots, and the Girl Scouts came to the board, our last week's board meeting, and they're going to create a mural for the children's room and so on. But one of the things I'd like to see in the future is many more programs that the library runs for all sorts of diverse types of things.
Now, all those kinds of programming require money. How is the library funded?
The library funded, this is an unusual library. I think there are only 2 in the county. Larchmont Library, for example, because we're in a tri-community area with Mamaroneck High School and Rhinex School. Larchmont Library has to go to the Larchmont Village Board and the Mamaroneck Town Council with their budget and ask them for money to provide the budget. In the early 90s, this library, with the help of Susie Oppenheimer, became a library district created by the New York State Legislature. So we are like a separate school district or a separate sewer district.
Let's say
But
school district.
so therefore we're our own entity. We have to have our board elected, whereas in other communities they're appointed, which also removes us from those political boards. And we have to have our budget passed like a school district.
So it's voted on separately?
Absolutely.
And when is the library budget vote?
This year it will be on December 14th. It's usually on within the first 2 weeks of December.
And you must live within the boundaries of the village of Mamaroneck
Correct.
to vote for that
Correct.
budget. Has the library ever had difficulty having a budget approved?
Not since I've been on the board.
Okay,
I mean, we have people who are concerned about taxes.
Well,
and,
everybody's
you
concerned
know,
about taxes.
And
for
our
sure.
tax is a separate, shows as a separate tax. It's collected by the village, but it shows on your village tax bill as a separate tax.
But that's why I revert to the question, what are we getting for our tax dollars spent for
You're
our...
getting a community center.
Okay.
And where else do you have, where else is there a community center in the village?
If somebody had a constituent group that wanted to meet here, I mean, senior citizens have their senior centers, but we'll say somebody says, I'd like to have a book club that meets here, or I have a knitting group, or whatever. Could they utilize the library?
Absolutely, we'd love it.
How would somebody approach, who would they approach?
Well, they call the desk, first of all, and they'll put them in the right direction.
Okay, so they
And we
talk
have
with
policies on it, and we have a combined, coming up in a couple of weeks, a combined, it's a holiday arts fair, crafts fair, sponsored by the library and the Mamaroneck Arts Council. So that's,
Is that a fundraiser for the library?
and I think the League of Women Voters had something here too.
Had a program
meeting.
one night,
Yes, had a program here one night.
So you can be a group, a dedicated group in the community, or just have your own
It could
little
be-
group that might
absolutely.
want to use the community room or another room?
We have another room down, a smaller room in the lower level, that if you wanted to use the smaller room.
So there are lots of opportunities here, even when the library's closed? Or must-
Even when the library's closed. A lot of those are evening meetings.
Okay.
And actually, because the community room is at the end of the hallway of the shared lobby with the Emlyn, there's another major entrance in, and of course, a lot of the Emlyn functions are in the evening as well.
Sure. So one needn't worry about the details of it. If you have some ideas for a program, or if you wish to use a room here for your private group, just call the librarian. He'll try to
Absolutely.
make it happen. I know you want to do a lot of programs. One of the programs, maybe I'm using the wrong word, that has always enthralled me has been the continuous book sale at the library. Now, in the old library, there was the Baxter room, which wasn't a great room, but it was piled high with books, and we had a volunteer who staffed that. Do we have the community book sale back again?
We have a whole separate room. On the lower level, you can walk in there, and the lights are automatic. They go on, and you can...
So you don't have to worry for somebody being there. If it looks dark, you can still walk in.
There's a sign on, this row of books costs $2. These cost $1. These cost $3. And you take those books and you go upstairs and you pay your money.
Now, I'm assuming that the library doesn't do that just because it was popular, but it also must be a significant source of revenue for the library.
It's a source of revenue. I don't know if it's significant, but you know, we use it for the little things that we'd like to do. For example, I think the staff is going to have a holiday party, so we contribute some money out of that fund so that the staff can have a holiday party.
I mean, I've always thought it was a great idea. I mean, pay $1 or $2 for a book. I'd probably pay it in overdue fines anyway, and have the book, and then give it back to the library to resell.
Absolutely.
So if people have books they'd like to donate, and everybody seems to have books they'd like to donate, what do they do?
Just bring them to the desk.
To the desk, and they'll take them, and they'll give
They'll
you a
take care of
receipt
it.
for them too, I believe. right?
Sure, if you'd like
If
it.
you'd like that. Now, do you think that the digital revolution is affecting that continuous book sale?
No.
You don't see that
I
stemming
don't see
at
that
all?
at all. People still, you know, I mean, yes, we're in a changing world, but I go there a lot on weekends, and I can't tell you how many people are down there, and they still want a hardcover book. And I myself am one of them. I said, oh, well, that book, you know, and I pulled it off the shelf, and I went upstairs, paid my $2, and I got it at home, and I'll get a chance to read it soon.
You get to read it, and then you'll turn it
I
back, and it'll sell.
turn it right back. Fortunately,
It's a good gig.
where I work, I don't have to cross a road, and where I live, I cross one road. I'm a half a block from here.
Does the business community support the library in any way here? I ask you that while you're thinking about the answer because we were talking about the really positive changes in the village of Mamaroneck over the last few years and how vital the downtown is. There are parties throughout the summer, the street is closed down, and there are festivals. The restaurants are just fabulous, as we all know.
Right.
I mean, they're not fast food restaurants, aside from 5 pizza stores at least. We have
Right.
some really, really great restaurants that are reasonably priced and most have outdoor cafes, so when the weather's nice, you can eat outside. And I just wondered if that community and the business community participates in the library in any meaningful way.
Not yet. That's a good idea. I mean, occasionally we have people, I know I've been to a couple of functions here where Dawn of Cafe Mozart has helped out. I think the growth of the avenue and the closing down several evenings during the summer, and with our, remember I mentioned before, our physical beacon of the library, so you could see it from the avenue, has brought a lot of people to recognize, hey, not only is Mamaroneck good, but they got this brand new library going up too. So yes, from that point. But I don't see yet, and maybe that's one of our goals, to have specific businesses help us.
Would be use all the help you can get, I
Yeah,
would think. But I would think things like the Chamber of Commerce are probably looking for places to meet, and this might be a great place for them to
absolutely. We want to
some time.
promote use of the library. I mean, that's why we built it. We didn't build it just so people can come in and read the newspaper.
You know, Jeff, in the minute or two we have left, this is such a spectacular achievement. If I say to everybody in the community, if you haven't seen it, come. You will be blown away. And I just watch people's faces. Sometimes I do come and have a cup of coffee and use my iPad. And I watch people come in. I've heard over and over again people say, wow, how long has this been here?
1927.
Right. But this building especially is a beacon. Nothing stands still. What are the challenges that we must face as we continually evolve?
Challenges for the library?
For the library, yeah.
To keep remaining flexible with our fast-using technology. So if things change, and that's how we try to design the building, so we can, our rooms and our systems and so on can be flexible to keep up with all of that. Because if we don't, then we're going to be, you know, an elephant, and everybody else is going to be using something different.
Now, I've been impressed with the knowledge of the reference librarians as far as technology and how to access even digital sources that the library has. Because a lot of people think, well, I have an e-reader now, so I have to buy books. That's not the case, is it?
That's correct.
Okay, so people need to know how to access the library's digital database and that it has a digital database.
We've increased our website and the information we have on our website. We put our budget on the website, so we're constantly putting new things on the website. And curiously, the reference desk, by the way, is right next to our row of tables with all of our computers too. So that's the
And the library has computer classes as well for people who are who need them.
But like us.
Well, we all need help. There's no question about it. But to get back to the question about digital books, I didn't know that the library had digital books until fairly recently, and that I could access them and borrow them, much as I would a hardcover book, and borrow them and read them on my iPad or Kindle or whatever device I might be using. And I guess I'd pay overdue fines if I kept them too long, as I always do, but hey, you know, the library's got to live.
That's true.
And they're depending on me for those fines, right?
Again, I don't know if that's our major source of income, but...
my husband would tell you that it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jeff, thanks so much for being my guest. It has been a pleasure to be here, spend this much time in the library, and I look forward to seeing you here again.
Thank you.